It's great to see some of you here, but most of you on the other side of the screen, so all welcome. As it was advertised, tonight we are having a lecture, and the theme is Reincarnation by Carol. And so tonight we're going to start by reading our initial inspirational reading, Our Daily Bread. So we don't have slides tonight, but I'll be reading, and I'll try to read in a very proper manner and slow so everybody can understand. Speaking of understand, the topic for this book, Our Daily Bread, is 167, is about understanding. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, Paul, as in Romans chapter 12, item 2. When we refer to the problem of spiritual transformation, the community of students of the gospel agrees with us to its necessity, but not all of them do seem to have perfect comprehension of the matter. Invariably, they all desire the modification, but the majority only aspires to be classified conventional change. Those that have been less fortunate monetarily seek to scale the control of material possibilities. The holders of the humble tasks fight over the higher positions, and in a disconcerting crescendo, almost all intend the improper transformation of the opportunities which suit them, submerging into a disquieting disorder. The indispensable renovation is not that of an exterior nature. The devoted Christian will be transformed not by external mannerism, and yes, by the understanding, endowing his own mind with renewed light in new concepts. Just as any earthly position requires the sincere application by any dedicated apprentice, the process of mental improvement requires constant effort in rightness and in knowledge. Even here, it is important to recognize that discipline will be a decisive factor. Do not become hardened, therefore, by the false notions that have already jeopardized you in the past. Try to consider the structure of your reasoning today before the circumstances that surround you. Question yourself as to what you gained in the gospel in order to analyze correctly this or that occurrence in your path. Do this, and the Lord's blessing will assist you in the illuminating reply to yourself. So with these beautiful words about understanding and practicing the Christian's morals, we ask everyone to join us in saying this prayer by sitting in a comfortable position, closing our eyes, trying to be present in this moment, or whenever you're watching this meeting, and lifting our thoughts and our feelings to God, our Heavenly Father, infinite source of love, peace, and harmony, and Jesus, our role model, our spiritual guide in this planet, the governor of earth, and also our benefactors, our spiritual guides and friends who are here with us in support and assistance and inspiration for this meeting. A moment that we take aside our challenges, our difficulties, and the hardship of the material life that we have here, and focus our attention to our spiritual nature, and hear some words of knowledge of Spiritism that undoubtedly will help us in our daily lives. We would like to send this vibration and these feelings that we have surrounding us this moment, and sending to all of those who could not make it tonight, but at this moment can benefit from the lecture online. We also ask our spirits to assist Carol during her presentation, and asking everyone to remain with the hearts and our minds open, so everyone can benefit from the moment that we're having tonight. So we ask permission to start another Allan Kardec Spiritist group of New Zealand meeting tonight. Thank you so much. So good. So now we go into the lecture, and I'll give the stage to Carol.
It's nice to have a place to stand again and do the lecture. It was, I'm sure for all of us, a period of adaptation doing the lecture from home. It was quite interesting talking to, what I felt talking to myself was the cure. So today at least I have a few faces here that I can stare while I'm talking. It makes a lot of difference. So cameraman, fine, step out.
No, you're fine. Maybe just speak up.
Yeah. So we, a few weeks ago, I was thinking of the theme for the lecture, and I actually talked to Renata, who suggested, I said like, oh, is there anything you would like to hear more about it or something? And she told me reincarnation, so I studied for a few weeks and tried. It's a very complex topic, so I did my best to today make a very simple approach to it, that even someone that is starting to study can understand, hopefully. We'll see if it is the case. But also reminding, it reminded me of so many things that I forgot about it, and as usual, was doing the study probably need more than you guys are listening to refresh or to learn from it. So I think for all of us that have been studying for a while, there are concepts and things that we just don't think about it. And just now Alcione arrived and I was in the car reading like one last thing because I was driving here and a thought came into my mind and I was like, oh, I have a doubt, you know. So it's always gonna happen, and as long as we keep talking to each other and coming to the study so we can talk about it, hopefully we'll see some of those, not all the doubts, I'm sure, we always have some new ones, but we can actually learn together. So that's very important what we do here on Wednesday, that we can do this exchange. Doesn't matter how long we've been studying, it's always important that we keep studying and keep having this interaction. So with reincarnation, it's one of the bases of Spiritism, right? We have several topics that characterize the Spiritist doctrine, and we have plurality of the words, we have reincarnation. So reincarnation is, to understand reincarnation first, we need to understand our body. So what our body is made of. So, and when I say our body, I say the human body. So for animals and minerals, etc., there's a different configuration. So we're talking about the human body now. So the human body is composed, of course, besides water and blood and all the minerals, etc. In Spiritism, we discovered that the body, the human body here on Earth, is composed of the organic body, so the flesh, what we can see, and what holds us here on Earth, and the perispirit and the soul. So the human body, the physical body, the organic body, and the soul, it's, I think, a pretty easy concept to understand what is it. So it's just what is made out of flesh and what is material, what is immaterial, the soul, the spirit, and the body that we have our appearance, the body that we have injuries, the body that has the organs. So it's quite easy to understand the difference between the two. Sometimes the complicated part is to understand what the perispirit is, and if we were not Spiritists before, it's probably something you only came to discover once you started studying Spiritism, the perispirit, or if you were in evangelization, is it the word, in child and youth studies, you heard that since you were small, but you had to learn from it. So something interesting is that we do teach kids when we do the study here on Sundays. We do teach the kids about this, which made me think that it's always a simpler way to explain how this connection between the three works. We teach the kids usually, there are several ways you can do it, but a lot of times you have a little doll cut out of paper, and you have a little doll cut out in a transparent paper or material, and then you have this cord that connects the spirit, so the transparent doll, with the paper one, with the material body, and you have a little rope or anything that is a string that connects both. So this connection is the perispirit. So the perispirit is what is connecting our body, our physical body, with our soul, with the spirit. So the perispirit, there are questions on the Spiritist book that regarding what is the perispirit made of, how does it feel, is it material or is it material? So the perispirit is made of, usually the perispirit collects the material to make itself from the world where you are incarnating. So here on Earth, that is a very material planet, that we still have very heavy bodies. The perispirit needs to be rougher. And for us, it's still a very ethereal material. They compare on the Spiritist book to a fog, or something that is not quite ethereal as a spirit, but is also not material and heavy as our body. So they compare to a fume, so something you cannot hold, but something you can see. So material enough that you can see, but immaterial enough that you cannot actually yourself just hold it. So the perispirit is this in between then that connects the spirit, which is an immaterial part of our body, which is the spiritual part of our body, to the very material, very heavy part of our whole human body. So the organic body and the soul are connected by the perispirit. And I got lost. But so when we talk about reincarnation, we are talking about, we're going to talk about disincarnation and reincarnation, but it's important that we understand all three parts of the body before that. Let's see if I forgot anything else. I made notes because there was so much information. I want to make sure I say everything I want to say. Yeah, so another nice thing, that's what I was going to say before. The perispirit then has a material that it takes from the planet, and it's not necessarily something we know what it's made of. So we have the universal fluid that is inside everything, that it is part on everything. So you can say the perispirit is made out of that, because everything contains the fluid. So one curiosity that talks about on the Spiritist book is that the perispirit changes according to the world you're going to incarnate. So it becomes lighter and lighter according to the planet's evolution. So the more evolved the planet is, the lighter and the more ethereal the perispirit will be, until you don't need it anymore, until it disappears and you don't need a material body anymore. You're only a perfect spirit, so you don't need the perispirit anymore. And another thing we used to teach the kids sometimes is that you get a balloon. So the balloon is the physical body, and you blow inside the balloon. So the air that you have inside of the balloon is the spirit. So right now, for sure, there are these incarnated spirits here with us that majority of us cannot see or cannot feel, but we know they are. So the same with the air, you know it exists, but you can only see it once the ball is actually wrapped around it. It gives the air a format. So the air is now round because the ball is holding the air inside of it. So the perispirit is like the balloon. So I said the physical body, but it's like the balloon. So the perispirit is what gives the spirit shape, because the spirit doesn't have a shape. So the perispirit will shape the body and will prepare the body to go into the physical body. Does it make sense? Nothing confused?
Yes.
So when we talk about disincarnating, we talk about the spirit leaving the body, the spirit and the perispirit leaving the physical body. So disincarnating, one of the questions of the Spiritist book is it painful? And I always find it interesting because I think so many of us is afraid of disincarnating, and a lot of people say, I am more afraid of dying, of the moment of death, if it is going to be painful, than I am of disincarnating. So in the Spiritist book he says that is not at all, it's not painful. So it's not supposed to be painful. It describes it in a very peaceful way that I find always interesting. That is, it's like an oil lamp that runs out of oil. That's how the spirit leaves the body. It's just the lamp is out of oil, so it just shuts down. So it's like, this is the way the spirit leaves the body. So it's not a quick process. For majority of people, it takes a while. So the more attached to matter we are, the longer it will be the disincarnating process. And disincarnating doesn't mean that if as soon as it happens and your body actually shuts down, it doesn't mean you are immediately disconnected from the body. Sometimes it takes a while for the perispirit to completely disconnect. So it's quite interesting, especially for people that actually, for example, stay in the hospital for a while and have the process of disincarnating can take days until actually you can see the machines stop beeping and the person actually is disincarnated. When dying in an accident, when suffering an accident or a shot or something that is unforeseen, and the person suddenly, the body suddenly is, the physical body is dead, can take a while for the spirit to actually disconnect from the body. So again, the connection is between the body and the spirit is, and when I say body, physical body, so body and the spirit is the perispirit. And the perispirit is connected through our whole body. So it's only one spirit, one perispirit, but connected to every single piece of our body. So I was reading something interesting in the Spiritist magazine talking about phantom members. You know, when a person loses an arm or loses a finger, there is a lot to do with the perispirit, because you still feel it like it's there. A lot to do with our nerves and how the body works, but also to do with the perispirit. And when you lose the hand, your perispirit is still needs time to adapt and actually disconnect from it, and so you lose all the feel of it. It takes a while for the body, your mind, and also for the spirit and the perispirit to adapt to the loss. So the perispirit is connected to every single piece of our body, and it takes sometimes a long time. In a few cases, can take even months for the spirit to disconnect 100% from the body. So if you know someone or know someone that is incarnated in the hospital, slowly, is quite interesting also to see that the first thing to be disconnected are our members, so our extremities. So the hands and the feet start to get cold as the perispirit starts to disconnect, and it slowly travels all the way to the heart and the brain. And from that moment on, so that's an important point here, because we'll talk about resurrection and other things later, is that after the perispirit is disconnected from the body, there is no, the body is now, when the body is dead, when the oil finishes in the lamp, there is no going back. The spirit is not going to return to the body. Once the physical death takes part, the person is not going to live again, not through that body, right? And in the Spirit's book also describes as just the ties getting between the perispirit and the body start to weaken, and the spirit just separates from the body. So a lot of people when disincarnating needs help from other spirits, and so we understand what's going on. So the spirit passed through a phase of disturbance that we call disturbance in the Spirit's book and in the Gospel. That is like the spirit, they compare with when the spirit is asleep and you don't quite understand what's going on. So it's a state of suspension where you get the spirit gets this disturbance is something for the spirit to pass through the phase of incarnating to disincarnating a little more easily. So it's not as hard on our spirits, on our minds, to happen all at once. Because we have to remember that going from the material world to the spiritual world is a lot of information, and it takes a long time. Many people disincarnate and they don't know they are disincarnated. Many people disincarnate suddenly and they think they are still here on earth and living a normal life. Many people know they are disincarnated, but they don't quite understand what should happen after, so they get very confused. And it just takes, the process of disincarnating is much longer than just leaving the body. After being on this disturbance state, the spirit slowly will start waking up on the spiritual plane if it is prepared. A lot of spirits again stay on this disturbance state for many years. A lot of spirits stay asleep for many years because they think that's what is supposed to happen when they disincarnate. That's the end. It's time to rest. I would just say, you know. And a lot of spirits need help of other spirits that have some sort of connection. Usually try to help. So it takes, it can take a while for the spirit to actually be able to wake up in the spiritual plane, and from the time we wake up, we start recovering from this past incarnation, which is, we all know it, we feel it, especially in times like now, it is a big job. So disincarnating and waking up on the spiritual plane after a little break for your mind actually takes time also for your spirit to recover, and slowly you will start remembering past lives. You will start with the help usually of spirits that have some affinity with us. So the Spirit's book talks also about, who am I gonna meet when I disincarnate? And usually people that you have a strong affinity, and there's a part that talks about love that is quite interesting, how love connects us all, and it doesn't matter if you are incarnated and the person is disincarnated, or if you happen to meet at some point on the spiritual plane, or if the person is here incarnated when you disincarnate, we're always going to be connected by this love. And when we disincarnate, we understand that the love that we feel here on earth might be very different from actual love and connection that we have towards many spirits that we might not be living with right now. So when disincarnating, you can have, if the spirits are in a degree of evolution that they can help you, you probably meet and they will have some help on this process of recovery. And majority of the spirits will stay either working on themselves and getting ready to reincarnate once again, or if they are evolved enough, might be helping other people, helping people here on earth, or helping other people that are disincarnating, doing some sort of work. So no one stays on the spiritual plane just chilling. It doesn't happen. Playing harp and listening to music. I'm sorry if I'm breaking anyone's dream. It won't happen. We just go to either work on ourselves or to help work towards something bigger and help other people until it's time to come back to earth, until it's time to reincarnate. So let me see. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say before. That's quite important. So the perispirit lives with the spirit. So when what stays here on earth, and Jesus says that on the Gospel, that is what is from water should returns to water, what is from the spirit returns to spirit. So what is material stays here on earth, what is from the spirit, what belongs in the spiritual plane, will go back to spiritual plane. So our body will separate from the perispirit and the spirit, and when we go back to the spiritual plane, we go back with our spirit and perispirit. So the spirits that we see on the mediumship meetings, or that we see in our dreams, that we know are disincarnated, they have a shape because all of us still have our perispirit. So the spirits have not so evolved like us. We need the perispirit to give us shape, and the spirit's mind can shape the perispirit. But usually for us, we just look like we used to look in our previous incarnation, because that's the easy, probably the way that you remember yourself the best, you know. Maybe, for example, my grandfather, when we started seeing him on mediumship meetings, or even in our house, every time our family is together, one of us sees him in the living room. It's quite nice, he comes to visit a lot. But he never looks the same age or the same way he looked when he disincarnated, because he never felt like he was that age, or he was he was blind and couldn't hear and was already walking very slowly. Every time we see him, he looks very young and very happy and very on his 50s probably, something like that. So this is the way the spirit sees itself. So it's quite nice. You can look the way you want, but of course no one's worried about that. So it's mainly your memory that it can be seen on your first spirit. And then I thought I'd talk a little about reincarnation on history, so through history, before we start talking about what is reincarnation itself. So on the course of history, there are many religions that actually believe in reincarnation, including Catholicism in the beginning. So I'll talk about it in the Bible, but first in history in general, we had Herodotus, which was a philosopher, so a Greek philosopher, and later it's going to be another Herodotus, so keep in mind that this one is the philosopher. So Herodotus mentions that the origin of the reincarnation seems to be on the ancient Egyptian religion, that they would believe that the body, so that's why they would make the pyramids and actually keep all the deceased person's items all together, and actually wait for the spirit to return. And they had this belief that, so it made me think that a few of them actually would expect the spirit to return to the same body and carry on living. So that means that a few of them would believe in, not in reincarnation, but in resurrection, right? Because it's the same body. But he describes also that a few of them would believe that the reincarnation would be instantaneous. So the body would, the physical body would die, then the spirit would disincarnate and automatically incarnate on something else. And when I say something, it's something, it's not someone. Could be in something from water, from earth, or from air. So could be animals or minerals, so it's a bit confusing. But it would be instantaneous, and when that thing also dies, they would again disincarnate and incarnate automatically on something else. And that will happen in a cycle of 3,000 years. For 3,000 years, the spirit will be reincarnating and incarnating automatically. And then Catholicism actually believed in reincarnation in the beginning. So in 553 after Christ, so after Christ, as I wrote, I get very confused with AC, BC, DC, because in Portuguese it's similar and it's not. So after Christ, they 553 after Christ, the Constantinople Council, thank you, that's the word. The Constantinople Council got reunited, and Justinian, which was the emperor of the Roman Emperor at the time, His wife, Theodora, she was really big supporter of slavery and she was just in general quite a selfish person, and she was very afraid of reincarnating on a slave body or to actually pay for the sins of the current life. So she pressured the Pope at the time to remove reincarnation from their beliefs, from the Catholic religion beliefs, and so he did for pressure from the emperor and his wife at the time. So that's when believing in Catholicism would be considered treason, or in Catholicism, no, in reincarnation would be treason, or it's now from that moment on, from 553, not included on the Catholic religion anymore. And then we have the pre-Socratic Greeks, the Druids, and Indian philosophers, and then you have different religions like Wicca and Hinduism and Buddhism, lots of religions that believe Kabbalah, which is a Judaic religion, so there's lots of religions that also believe it. So in the course of history you always hear in different ways, not exactly how we believe it and how we find to happen. Lots of religions believe, like the Egyptians, that it could reincarnate into anything, that you would reincarnate for different reasons. So it's a mix of information there, but it is since the beginning of time there is a discussion about it, what happens in the afterlife. So that's quite interesting. And then in the Bible you have reincarnation appearing quite a few times. I just chose three parts of the Bible. They are also on the Gospel, where we talk about reincarnation. So first, the story between Elijah and John Baptist. So Elijah was a prophet that lived before Christ's time. So Elijah actually was one of the people that resurrected someone else. So he, I wrote the name of the city because I always get confused. So the widow of Sarepta, he resurrected her son. So he came to visit them, and her son passed away because he was very sick. And he actually talked to God and helped resurrect their spirit. So Elijah, after Elijah's time, Jesus came, and when Jesus was here on earth, when he did his first, when he participated on the first resurrection, people around him questioned him, and if he was Elijah, because he was the same thing that happened to the prophet years ago. So people said, "Oh, are you Elijah?" And he turns to the apostles and says, "No, Elijah was here already, and none of you recognize him." So Elijah's reincarnation was actually John Baptist. So John Baptist was a lecturer, so he would travel and talk about God's word and talk about basically about principles and about God's word. And so baptism comes from his name, from John Baptist, right? And that's because he would actually take in people that committed sins on their opinion, and the whole process with water, to actually use water to clean the sins of the person, of the sinner, so they could carry on with their lives, was just symbolic. So he never said that the water actually did something to the person. It was just a symbology for the person to be able to, now your sins are washed and you can carry on with your new life, you can be reborn. So the water in the Bible, and in the Gospel they explain this quite well, they explain that at the time they believed the water was the source of life, was the beginning of all life. So they use water several times to say something is beginning. So with the baptism, that is clear also in this part that he was baptizing, that we later call baptizing, but he was using water to do this symbolic restart for people, but for grown-up people, because children don't have really sins, right? If you believe they are just born in now, we all know we are carrying more than our fair share of sins from other incarnations, but for them, they believe their life was just starting. It didn't make sense to do that to a child. But anyway, so John Baptist was actually decapitated by, and again, Herodotus, but that the king. So not the philosopher, two different people. Herodotus, the king, actually decapitated, sent someone to decapitate John Baptist because he was afraid he was starting a revolution. So he got killed. And when the apostles asked Jesus about, and people asked him about him being Elijah, John Baptist is already dead. And he says, oh, he was here, but you didn't recognize him. So he's talking about reincarnation, right? He was him. Elijah already came back and already left, but no one recognized him. And it's interesting also that another known reincarnation of John Baptist is Allan Kardec. So it's several different incarnations, and there are more names that we might recognize there, but it's quite a nice story. And the second part is when Jesus talks about, for only those who are reborn will see God's kingdom. So he's talking to Nicodemus in this part, and Nicodemus says, oh, but how a grown man can actually crawl back into a womb, and into a woman's womb, and be born again? And Jesus said to him, oh, you should know better, because he's quite a well-studied man, that this cannot happen. So it is, and that's why he says, like, oh, what is water should go back to water, what is from the spirit should go back to the spirit. So he's talking about the separation of the body and the spirit, and he talks about actually only a man that lives many lives that means the evolution, the reincarnation, can see God's kingdom, and that we know is not heaven, but to actually reach perfection, right? So only through reincarnation. And of course, I was talking before about the difference between reincarnation and resurrection. So the difference, we already said it, so Jesus resurrected, was present in the process of resurrection of a few people. Elijah resurrected someone else. So in this part of the Gospel talks about the resurrection of Lazarus. So Lazarus got very sick, and Jesus arrived at his house when he was already passed, so when he was already considered dead. And he actually resurrected after Jesus arrived, and talked and said, like, oh, if you believe it, you live again. And he actually comes back to life. So I think important also for us to know is that we all know that Jesus had a huge amount of information and knowledge, and way more evolved than any of us here on Earth at the moment. So he could manipulate matter, he could understand the way nature and the planet works way better than any of us. But also, so it doesn't mean that it was not a miracle, but also what we need to keep in mind is that it's very, very different times. How many people actually were considered dead and they were alive? After a while they woke up, you know. There are many diseases that you cannot perceive if the person is actually dead, if you don't have the right machinery for, if you don't know how to analyze it. So it could have been anything really. Maybe they were actually still alive, and at that time when Elijah arrived or when Jesus arrived, they actually woke up or got healed, but not necessarily resurrected, you know. So there's many ways of seeing it, but the important part is what Jesus would always say to anyone that got cured, is that the faith is what saved people. So that's what is the difference. It doesn't matter if it was a resurrection or a cure, it was always connected to faith. So the difference between resurrection and reincarnation is resurrecting, you're going back to the same body. So what we know not to be possible was the ties between the perispirit, and the physical body are untangled, are disconnected. The spirit cannot return. So once the physical body is dead, it's dead. It is the end for that body in specific, and the spirit will continue to live later in another body. So that's reincarnation, leaving one body and entering another. So reincarnation means literally going back to the flesh, right? So in Portuguese it's even more clear, reencarnar, because of carne, right? Because of flesh. So going back, doing it again, redoing it, going back to the physical body. So that's what reincarnating means. And the process of reincarnation, and then I made myself a little chart, so don't forget to say anything. So the process of, I was talking before about disincarnation. So when the spirit is out of that state of disturbance and starts remembering facts of previous lives, and starts actually working either on itself or at the spiritual plan, helping in any way, so helping other people or working towards another chore, the spirit actually starts getting ready for the process of reincarnation. Interesting on the spirit's book is that it compares all the time the spirit in the spiritual plan living as we do here on earth, and we are always going towards our disincarnation. So we all know it's going to happen at some point. For some people, it's a very anxious time to keep waiting for the day you're gonna disincarnate. And for some people, it's not even in their minds, and they live through it. And when it happens, a big surprise for some people. Some people are ready for it. People who are less materialistic will take it better than people that are too connected to earth. And it compares that time with the spirits living the spiritual plan. That is, all the spirits living the spiritual plan know the time of reincarnation will happen. So they live through the life in the spiritual plan. Also, a few of them very anxious about the day they will have to reincarnate, because we all know it's not a very pleasant time to be here on earth when you compare to the spiritual plan. Of course, I really hope for all of us that majority of our lives we found joy on something or love on something, but we know that happiness is not from this world, and we are all here to grow. And grow means most of the time, or at least little of the time, we're going to suffer so we can keep evolving. So for a lot of spirits on the spiritual plan, it's a very anxious time when they have to get prepared to reincarnate. When I was reading this, it made me think of, I sent to a few of you a few weeks ago this new Pixar movie that is going to be launched, I think this year or next year, that talks about disincarnating and reincarnating and talks about souls. It looks very cool by the trailer. I can't remember the name of it. So there you go. So maybe I'll find it and I'll put it on the page later, because it's very, very nice. So I'm looking forward to it. And on the trailer you can see that is a person that disincarnates, that really didn't want to disincarnate, and he meets a soul that really doesn't want to incarnate. And he tries to show her why it's worth it coming to Earth, because there's so many nice things that are worth living for. So it's quite interesting. It looks like fun, and it looks like it will help us in the kids study. So I think a lot of we know that a lot of spirits are in the spiritual plan waiting to reincarnate. That is not that, of course, depends on the pace that Earth is going. We have thousands of children being born every day, but we have billions of spirits disincarnated. So there is a queue there, and it can take a very long time for a spirit to be ready to reincarnate also. So when disincarnating, like I said before, every spirit is going to take its time. A few spirits will be on the spiritual plane, so it's not very common that a spirit stay for just a few years. Usually it's quite a good period of time. We have to think that actually remembering everything that happened on all your past lives, that could have been hundreds of reincarnations, it's a long process. It's not, you don't wake up one day and everything is there in your mind and you just go insane trying to cope with everything. It's slowly, it compares in the Spiritist book with a person that lost their memory on earth, and slowly they start recovering the memory. So they see an object that reminds them of something that happens, and slowly you recover all the memory from your other lives. So that can take a long time, and you also need time to prepare to come back. So when the spirit is ready to discuss the next incarnation, we all participate on a reincarnatory plane. So that is, you have a voice and opinion about what you think you can handle for the next life. And in the Spiritist book says we can even have a say on which word we want to reincarnate, or which part of the word we want to reincarnate. They're not always going to listen to us, but you can ask for it. And of course, God being perfect and just, you're going to be born in exactly where you should, where you deserve, you're going to work towards a bigger plan than we probably would make for ourselves. So even though we have a say, our free will, it's happening all the time. So we are choosing before we reincarnate, and after we reincarnate, our free will takes over. We forget everything, it takes over, and sometimes we go the opposite way we thought we would. So on this process, higher spirits and there's more spirits participating on that construction of the reincarnation plan. And after the decisions are made, the spirit starts getting ready to actually reincarnate, to physically coming back to Earth. So an interesting part also talks about what happens when the spirit is actually not willing to participate in the process, or is not ready to make decisions. So the decisions are made for the spirit, and he will reincarnate on a plan not that he didn't, or he or she, or the spirit didn't actually have an opinion on. And it asks also, can a spirit that is not ready reincarnate? So talks a little about why. So first, no, all the spirits that are reincarnating are because they are ready for it, supposedly, right? So it asks on the Spiritist book, like, what happens when a spirit actually changes its mind and decides to leave the body after the connection starts to form. So the connection between the perispirit and the spirit and the body actually starts being formed on the conception. So when the spermatozoid enters the egg, and fecundates it, that's when the perispirit starts getting attached to the human body, to the physical body. So it takes all the time that the spirit is in the belly for the perispirit to actually attach to the body fully. So in this part, Allan Kardec asks, what if the spirit actually changes its mind while the process is still happening? So it can happen that the spirit leaves the body, but it's not very common. Majority of the miscarriages and the malformations of the body are actually physical problems, not so much spiritual. And of course, there are cases where this miscarriage, or children that are born already and don't live very long, or they are born without a brain, or something that we know they are going to disincarnate, or they are already born disincarnated. not necessarily disincarnated, but with their physical body dead. This is also, majority of the time, a trial or an expiation for the parents, more than for the spirit. Sometimes can be something for the spirit to pass through the process of reincarnating and kind of getting prepared for another life. But it's majority of the times the proof or expiation for the parents. So when the spirit, before the spirit incarnates on the fetus, or we call the fetus, it will pass through the same process that it passed when disincarnating, that it started when it left the physical body. The spirit actually entered in a state of disturbance, and slowly it started to waking up in the spiritual plane and remembering everything that happened on previous lives. This will also happen the other way around when the spirit is incarnating. So when incarnating, the spirit will enter on a state of disturbance when being connected to the embryo, and through the whole process of pregnancy, the spirit inside the belly, right? The spirit connected to then to embryo, fetus, baby, will actually feel. They describe as a feeling of being asleep. Like you can still hear it, and it's true that the baby can hear the voice of the mother, the father, recognize later, but it's in the disturbance state. Also because the perispirit needs time to adapt. The perispirit, like we said before, it's not as ethereal as the spirit, so it takes a while to adapt again from your adult, or what size was when you disincarnated, to a baby again. So it takes a long 9 months for the spirit to actually be attached. And then there is a question that says, but when is the spirit fully attached? When is the perispirit fully attached to the body? And it says, on the moment that the baby cries, that it comes out of the belly, that's when it's complete. That's a new life. So we have all these theories on the child being actually more in the spiritual side than in the material side until it's 5 or 7 years old. It's mainly because you were closer to being disincarnated, to being in the spiritual plane, than you were of being incarnated. So it takes a while to actually get situated. There's a big difference between what you were living before and what you're going to live from now on. I wrote a few questions also that says in the book. And it's also about who decides which body will the spirit reincarnate on. If it is the spirit that decides, if it is how it's decided, and again, the spirit has a say on it. But the body is 100% related to the type of trials or expiations that the spirit will pass here on earth. So why some people are born poor, why some people are born without limbs, why some people are born with cerebral paralysis and different kinds of diseases. So this is all about the justice of reincarnation. So we study that a lot, and the more we study, the clearer it becomes that reincarnating is a matter of justice. So God is always giving us the chance of starting over. So every time we have a new reincarnation with a clean slate, we forget, that's something important. So in the disturbance time, the spirit before incarnating also is the time that the memories are slowly erased from the spirit's mind, and the spirit starts incarnating. And when we do fully incarnate, we can't remember anything that happened on the previous lives anymore, generally, or majority of it at least. So when we talk about justice, we talk about a clean slate. Every life that we start here on Earth or in another planet, we have a clean slate. We have the gift of starting over. Doesn't matter how many mistakes we made in our previous life, we always have a new chance of doing it better. And also, it matters everything that we did, good or bad, it will come back to us. So the more we work on our current life, the better we will understand what will happen on our next life. No one can promise us that if you are very good on this life, the next one you won't suffer at all. But it's definitely always easier if we're growing through love. If we're going through love, it tends to be easier, right? If we understand why we're going through suffering, why we are passing through afflictions, it's a bit easier to pass through them. And the question of why people are born with diseases, why people have a disease in the middle of their lives that ruins their current life, why some people are born poor, some people are born rich. Is it because God is incredibly unjust and He just gives away the way He wants? Not at all. It's because we are all compensating for something we had in the past. So bad or good, we will come back, and in the next reincarnation, the next reincarnation is always 100% connected to the previous incarnation. So doesn't matter what you do, even though we probably won't remember, divine justice will never forget, right? So it will come back in a form or another. So this is probably the biggest proof of God's justice, is that we all have the same chance. So we are all created ignorant and simple, and we all decided which path we would want to take in life, and we are all still deciding. So we all have the same chances every day of doing something different, and it's always us making this decision. And then to finish, some known proofs of reincarnation. So across time, there is always some sensationalistic newspapers and magazines that talk about things that happen with children or with people about that proves reincarnation. But I think for us it's pretty clear, after all that we talked today, that it is a fact, even more than proof from what we hear and what we see. Is just very logical on why it happens. But I thought it was worth mentioning that even people that don't believe in reincarnation can see proof of it in some things that just happen in general life. So you can see proof of reincarnation in children. Like I said, when children are very small, they have a lot of them have those memories that they don't know where it came from. A lot of them know their families before they actually get to know each other. They already have a big connection with their mother or their father, or sometimes a brother or a sister. A lot of them have memories of past lives and already have the love for that person, or even the other way around, already have a very difficult time with certain people when they are very small and don't even understand what's going on. Or we know also several cases of children that would talk at 2, 3, 5 years old, would talk about war, how they died in war, or how a certain person was an enemy. So this is not by chance. This is some sort of memory that actually stayed with the spirit, and they are remembering at the moment. And majority of children grow and forget. So it takes a while for the spirit to sometimes forget the information, but a lot of them just grow a little older and forget all of that. Not so much the feelings. I think we know a lot of children and adults that grow up with feelings for other person that they don't know how to explain and they can control, but in general memories, they go away. Also proof is in our dreams. So we know that when we are dreaming, we are not disincarnated, because the perispirit is still connecting. Even though our spirit can travel, but our perispirit is still connecting the spirit and the body. So when we dream, we know we leave our bodies and we can meet people that are disincarnated, or people that we knew in past lives, and we can recognize them. Even though we don't have the memory, we have the fondness and we have that feeling, and we can still, our spirits can still recognize people that we lived within other lives. And the last part, abilities that a lot of people are already born, that all of us are born with, prone to different abilities. Some people are very good in learning languages, some people are very good musicians, and you have a facility to learn certain things. You have you are spending towards something that you are already kind of good at it. It's just proof also that the spirit reincarnates and still carries all the knowledge, carries all the abilities that you learned on past lives are still on us, and not as pronounced that it was when we were on that incarnation where we learned, but they are definitely there. And something that I didn't write also, that even on the Spiritist book talks about also that you can have signs in your body sometimes that are just a reflection of your perispirit. So the perispirit can have marks also. For example, a gunshot or something that actually hurts the perispirit very badly. And sometimes the physical body reflects that the mark. It's not very common, and not all marks will reflect that. And I think the spirits say that so many times in the Spirit's book. Some things are not really relevant to us, and we don't need to know all the time. So to finish, I watched a lecture from Divaldo that also left a very nice message for us and, about the anniversary of the group. If you guys haven't watched it yet, just watch it on our Facebook page. It's very nice. I watched a lecture from him talking about reincarnation, and he said this sentence that was very, I thought it was very nice. That God is love, and He doesn't forgive our mistakes. He gives us the chance of fixing them. So more important than just forgiving, we all know and we all talk about it all the time, how forgiving and loving God is. But the way that God forgives us is actually giving us a chance of fixing it. And that's what reincarnation means. Every reincarnation is a new chance of fixing something, of evolving. So I think to become less anxious, if this is something that keeps us very anxious, disincarnating, incarnating again, that's what we need to keep in mind, that it is just a new shot. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
If anyone wants to write on Facebook, I can reply later if we can see them.
Or live, now that we have
Or
incarnated and disincarnated people, spirits here. So we'd like to thank once again Carol for tonight's lecture, the first of Corona.
Yes.
Well done.
Can we have time now?
You can have fun. Can you press finish, please?
Yeah, sure.
See you next week.